just want to do this freestyle because I just want this to be, a conversation, which we are like doing, and we're gonna post this on the internet. So I don't want this to be like a proper interview style podcast, but it's just gonna be two friends catching up.
Awesome, bro. Yeah, I love that. I love those. Those are the best types of podcasts usually. So I love it.
Awesome. Andre Haykal Jr., welcome to the show. How you doing?
What's going on, Zane? It's good to catch up again, bro. It's been a little while.
Awesome. So, like, for those who might not know you, can you just tell a little about yourself?
There is no way.
Is it me or? Yeah, is it good now?
Sorry, you want to restart it? I think my Wi-Fi cut out at like right as soon as you hit the start button.
Sure, no problem.
And bro, your name, how do I pronounce your name? Is it just Zane?
It's Zane. So do
Zane.
you actually remember my real name or not?
Anshul.
Of course. Awesome. That's cool.
Isn't that crazy? I remember.
Yeah, crazy it is. Welcome to the show, Andre. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to catch up, bro. This is long overdue, and this should be fun.
Yeah. So for those who might not know about you, what you do and who you are, can you please tell a little about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say most people don't know who I am. I'm not super big on social media or anything, but my whole vibe is like I just run a bunch of businesses. I build businesses online in the education space, in the marketing space, in the software and the data space. So I'm just like an entrepreneur at heart, building businesses that I think the market needs. And yeah, it's been like a 7-year journey from when I first started in this space.
Crazy. So do you actually remember we scheduled like a few series of calls like once a week, and you were helping me out to start. So at that time, what I was doing some Fiverr gigs here and there, and then I wanted to start a business, and I had no friends, no network, and I didn't want to, I did not want any business to start in India because I knew the amount of money that you get for the services that you provide is really less. So I want to start abroad, like in the US or UK, right? And I got connected with you in some way that we'll talk about later in the show. And you were kind enough to give your time, and then we scheduled a series of calls where you helped me to get there. So you helped me land my first client, and you did a LinkedIn post about it. So maybe
I remember.
can just share my screen if it's possible here on Riverside. Yeah, it is.
I remember the exact LinkedIn post you're talking about, bro. That was crazy.
Right. You able to see it?
It's loading. Yep, there it is.
So this particular post, has it that time has just changed my life and my perspective about myself. So like this thing actually made my whole year. And
3 years ago, bro.
Yeah, 3 years ago. Isn't that crazy? First of all, I was 16.
Wow, so now you're 19 and you're still going. You're doing all this stuff
yeah, I'm 20 now. I'm 20.
20. Awesome, bro.
Yeah. So before we start talking about anything, I want to acknowledge you, and I want to appreciate you. I want to tell you that, I was 16, and probably it was my first big win, I would say. And that changed everything for me. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, bro. I always say, like, I do a lot of coaching and I do a lot of consulting calls, and we have an education program called Client Ascension. So we get that a lot. Students thanking us for helping them to get their first win or their first client or hit their goals in business. But there are other students that we'll spend time with and we'll try to help that don't hit their goals or don't get that first client. And so it's really also, you should thank yourself for taking the action and putting in the work that most other people are not willing to put in, because I can only tell you what to do. It's up to you to actually go out and do it. So.
Right, exactly. So I want to start with this. You wrote a LinkedIn post a couple of years ago, and this is like I'm gonna just read it the way you wrote it. So this is my new golden rule for success in business: be consistently relentless in your pursuit, but remain patient with the results. And I think, it's just not been written here for the sake of writing. You are, like, you just portray that yourself, right? This is what you do in real life, and I've seen that over and over, and I believe that these kind of traits, how some people just have it, but for some you have to develop it, right? So the first question is, how did you develop these kind of traits and this kind of mindset?
So could you read the post back? Because when you're reading it, it just completely froze again on my end. I think it's my building's Wi-Fi.
Sure, no problem. So it was: be consistently relentless in your pursuit, but remain patient with the results.
Man, this is my favorite saying. I literally just recorded a video for Instagram yesterday talking about the two things that I've done extremely well over the past 7 years that have helped me to go from selling sneakers in, like, living at my parents' house selling sneakers, to now 7 years later running 3 or 4 different businesses that are going to bring in over $5 million this year. And the two things are being relentless with your pursuit. It's also could be referred to as like consistent, right? Like day-to-day consistency of actually getting things done that are going to contribute to where you're trying to go, but also patient with the outcome of those inputs. So the way I always explain it or dumb it down now is like inputs over outputs. Like focus on the inputs, which are the things that you can do, like make a certain amount of calls, send a certain amount of emails, post a certain amount of content on social media. And then the outcome of you doing that, like how many people like your post, how many people comment on your post, how many people pick up the phone, how many people respond to your email, how many people buy your product, that is not in your control. Those are outputs. And that's the stuff that most people are focused on, but it's the stuff that you're least in control over. So focus on the inputs and trust in God or in a higher power that if you're doing the inputs every single day consistently, eventually the outputs will be there. And that's my entire business framework is I know what I need to do on the inputs of sending emails, hiring team members, posting on Twitter, right? And I know that the outputs, like the clients, the revenue, the results are going to be there. It's just not a matter, like I can't tell you when, because it's not on my timeline. It's on, I believe at least on a higher purpose, like God's timeline.
Right. So, like, saying it one thing, but when you execute it, sometimes you face a lot of problems, being consistent with your efforts, and believing in yourself, because sometimes you don't have people, you just don't have like-minded people around you, or people who can help you or guide you, but you just want to do something maybe you're passionate about, for example running a business, right? So how can someone really execute it really well?
It's just, it's don't overcomplicate it. So I always like to say this as well, is like business is simple, but it's not easy. Like there's not so much complexity to how to run a successful business. Showing up every single day and actually doing those things is not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's just like if you're trying to get in shape. This is like the best example you can give, because most people can relate to this more than they can business and entrepreneurship. If you want to get in shape, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple. You eat well, you go to the gym, you work out, you stay active. Simple, but is it easy to actually do all those things? No. And so the number one thing that you need is community and accountability. Community, because it's really hard to go at it alone. If you're going through the trials and tribulations and things are hard and they're difficult and they're demotivating, if you don't have another person going through those times with you, it's going to be really easy to give up. And then accountability of when you're supposed to show up. Is there someone looking over your shoulder, making sure that you are showing up? And if you're not, are they bringing you back in, or is it just you as the final straw? And so that's what we provide through a lot of our products is coaching, community, and accountability, because it is, again, it's simple, but it's not easy to show up every single day. Like for me, for the past 7 years, showing up every single day, putting some effort towards building these businesses, it is easy. I'll wake up one day and not feel too good about what I'm doing and question whether or not this is going to work out or question whether or not this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But having the community, having team members, having people that are holding me accountable to say, hey, like you are on the right path, keep going. And even again, the higher power, like having faith in God or whatever you believe in, those are all things that you need to lean on to just get through those darker days.
Right. So you just talked about, first of all, this is what exactly you used to say like 3-4 years ago when we used to talk. And you're just so consistent with your thoughts as well. And when you're consistent, that you're consistent in almost every aspect of your life. It's not just business, not just gym, but every aspect of your life, right? So you just talked about community and accountability, right? So if let's say if you were just starting out again from zero, you had no connections, no network, no like-minded people around you, how would you build that community, and how would you build that source of accountability?
Yeah, I would first figure out who am I, like as a person, like what am I good at, what am I interested in, who am I similar to? Because you have to identify with something. Like communities, the reason people join communities and choose one community over the other is because they're closer. They closely identify with whatever that community stands for. So you have to know, like, what is it you stand for? For me, like I grew up, I was lucky. I had a family of entrepreneurs. So I was always interested in entrepreneurship, interested in startups, interested in certain things like Lebanese culture, right? So like think about where you're from, like your background, your heritage, like what makes you you. Doesn't just have to be business focused. I went to a Catholic school in high school, like a private high school, all these sorts of things. And so finding communities that are closely connected to who you are as a person and what your interests and beliefs are, that's the best place to start because you're going to click right away. And also just understanding that it takes time. Like I've probably been in hundreds of communities, honestly, since I started my entrepreneurial journey, and I've gotten value out of a good majority of them. But not all of those communities stuck around or made sense for me to stay in because I got my value and I got out. And so there is not just going to be like one community that you find. Like go out, join communities that speak to what you're interested in and passionate about, and see how it goes, and connect with those people. And eventually, what will happen is you'll join enough communities to the point where none of them are exactly what you're looking for. And so guess what? You create your own. And that's what we did with Client Ascension is we created our own community because we wanted to create a place where, we were really happy and we had all the resources and all the people we wanted to be around when we're going through this journey of entrepreneurship. So that's kind of the journey I took. So to answer your question is first figure out who you are as a person. What are your interests? What is your background? What are you good at? What do you care about? And then go and find communities that have those types of people in them. And it's easy online now. It's social media. I mean, that's the only answer to this question. You just have to go out and look for it. There's really no excuse. It's out. It's all out there.
Right. And you just talked about your family, and you recently you haven't posted a lot about it. You did a podcast and a tour post about your grandfather that went viral, right? So let's just go a little bit over that, about because you have entrepreneurial background. Your father and your grandfather were entrepreneurs, and they've sold like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of companies, right? So let's go a little over that, and maybe you tell your experience and what have you learned from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm super lucky. The two biggest influences in my life were my grandpa, who's the most successful entrepreneur I've ever met. He's sold, again, like you mentioned, over $100 million worth of businesses, and is just super fulfilled by the work that he's been doing over the years. And he's even involved his two sons, his daughter, in each of these business deals. So everyone's benefiting. And so he's just amazing in those aspects. And then my dad, who's an immigrant, he was born in Lebanon. There was some wars there as he was growing up, and they got the opportunity to leave the country and come to the U.S. And he struggled through the school system because of the language barrier and everything else. And so he found himself in entrepreneurship, and specifically real estate. So both of them were super successful entrepreneurs in different industries. And so growing up, I just got to watch, you know, really like how they approach things. And the two things that stood out the most was one, like the work ethic that's required. Like they're the hardest workers that I've ever seen, even to this day. And I still strive to be as hard of a worker as both my dad and my grandpa. And then number two, the importance of relationships and the people that you surround yourself with. Again, like I said earlier, like don't try to go at it alone. Like neither of them tried to go at it alone. They all have their alliances and their partnerships and the people that they can rely on for different aspects of the business. And those are really the two things that I took away and still try to apply today. I've always been a really hard worker, willing to put in as much time as required, because I've seen them do it firsthand growing up and still even to this day. Like my grandpa's sold portfolios of companies and he still shows up to the office every day and he loves it. He loves it. He's fulfilled by his work, which is also, super admirable.
Incredible. And that is why you started businesses, when you were so young. So, like, do you remember, like, what is your earliest business venture that you remember, and how were you?
Yeah, my first business venture was, I mean, if you go way back, like the classic story of like being in school is like one year I got like a book of like it was like origami and paper airplanes and like how to build them. And so I took it to school and I build them and then sell them to like my friends at school. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, I'd imagine. But my first like legit business when I was old enough to understand like what business actually is, was selling sneakers. So basically, I was super interested in sneakers. I loved like just fashion in general, like Jordans, Yeezys, LeBrons, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant. Like I just loved like the NBA and basketball and the sneakers as well. And I realized there was an opportunity to buy certain sneakers and then go to somewhere like eBay and sell them for more than I bought them for. And like that concept was crazy to me. And so I started a business where I would, set up certain campaigns to get a lot of those sneakers and then go out and resell them for more than I bought them for. And I started that around 15 or 16 years old.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So the first business that I like when we got connected, the first one that I knew, that was Real Talk University, the podcast. But you have a ton of other businesses that you started, RNA Nike Hookup, Kiko's, Express 80C, Your Call Sports, Who Won. Like, what about all these businesses? I've never heard anything about them.
They
So,
all
like,
failed, bro. They all failed. So this is like what I try to get across anytime I go on a podcast or put out content is like you're looking at someone who is successful, but what you're not seeing is the 7 years and the multiple failed ventures that I had to go through to get here. And I'm not necessarily saying everyone has to fail as much as I did. I think there's, coaching programs and the work that I do is to try to help people learn from the past mistakes and failures so that they can mitigate it. You're still going to fail regardless. It's never going to be a straight line to success, but you can fail a whole lot less than I did because you can learn from my past mistakes. And that's kind of the concept of self-education, right? But anyways, those ventures were, I mean, we had Who Won, which was like a gambling app, which never worked out because there were huge corporations that would never allow that to happen because gambling is like a government run business. We had Express ATC, which was one of the businesses I started when I was doing the sneaker reselling. That went for like a year and then fizzled out. You mentioned Your Call, which was like an app idea I had, which I lost a ton of money on. At the end of my high school career, I lost like $30,000 on an app development that just never panned out. So that sucked. And there are just a bunch more in there that just didn't pan out. But look, like, so here's the other thing too, right? Is the perspective. If you're interviewing me when those businesses are failing, like it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like nothing's working. Every time I try something, it fails. Why should I even continue to try? Like, why keep going? It doesn't make sense. Like, it's like it takes a crazy person to be like, look, these 10 things failed. Let's try again. But I kept trying. And so now I look back at all those ventures and I'm so grateful that I did fail at those because it's brought me to where I'm at today. Like I wouldn't be doing all the great things I'm doing today if I didn't fail at each of those things I did back then. And so at the time, it's super painful. It didn't make sense. Couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I kept going. I kept the faith, most importantly, and I kept showing up every single day consistently, regardless of the outcomes, failure or success. And that's what got me to where I'm at now.
Right. And these are like 10 businesses that you started. And it was 2015, 2016. How old were you at that time?
Yeah, dude,
Maybe
I was really
17,
bad at
18?
business. Like clearly I was really bad at business. And I'm still not great
But
at business. I'm learning. I'm young,
but
I'm
the
new to
fact
all.
that you were able to get stuff together, you built apps, right? And did you like build it on your own, or did you hire someone to do that?
No, we hired people, and that was part of like the struggle is not understanding how to hire people, who to hire, what we were hiring them for, how much to pay. Like there's just so much you learn through this process. But yeah, that those like I think the first one started when I was like 15 or 14 even, and it went all the way to where I'm at now. Like for the past 7 or 8 years, I've been doing business.
Awesome. So what was that inflection point where you felt like, okay, now I've started to progress in the right direction, or maybe this is the moment that I leveled up, or maybe turned myself into the right thing? What was that inflection point?
Yeah, it really clicked because I started to understand that business was not as complicated as I was trying to make it. My idea of business back in the day, when I was going through the motions with failed ventures, was I have to create something entirely new, something super innovative, something super complex and impressive to have a chance at success. And so that's why I was like tied up on app development and these businesses before they were trying to be like the next startup that gets insane funding and just completely changes the world. But what I failed to understand is business is just coming up with a solution or a service to solve other businesses or other people's problems. And like when I started to understand that, it made business so much simpler. It's like, what skill sets or what do I have to offer that can help solve a business's problem? And the first thing that really clicked for us was so I learned that through the podcast, right? So basically what happened was I failed at business for long enough to the point where I'm like, I need to talk to someone that's having success because I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong.
I'm at the same point, by the way.
Yeah, so I'm like, I need to understand what I'm doing wrong. Like, what is it that they're doing that I'm not doing that's helping them to have success? So we started Real Talk University, like you mentioned, which was a podcast. And we were super creative with it. Of like, this is a podcast by college students that have no idea what they're doing, but they want to be successful. So they're going to go out and ask successful people how to be successful, and that's what we did, and it was so much fun. And we interviewed, I think, over 100 really successful entrepreneurs. So you talk to 100 entrepreneurs and you ask them questions like we're doing now, you're going to learn a thing or two. And one of the recurring things was, hey, like, this is what business is. It's not that complicated. Like, provide a service that's valuable to other people or other businesses. And so over the time of doing the podcast, we picked up skill sets. Like we were able to build a brand for the podcast on social media. Other podcasts couldn't do that. They didn't know how to do it as well as we did. We were able to get high level guests on our podcast. Other podcast hosts didn't know how to do that. They wanted to do that. And so over the course of doing the podcast, not only did we learn how business works, but we also learned specific skill sets and value adds that we could provide based on our past experience. So kind of look at your past experience and think like, what is it that you do well, or at least better than other people? Because at the end of the day, like your product or service does not have to be so much better than the next person down. It just has to be better in general. And that can be having better pricing, having better service, having better experience. There's so many, ways to approach that. And so don't overcomplicate it is really the breakthrough we had. And then just tapping into the skill sets that we developed over time to make it make sense.
Awesome. Do you even remember how we got connected in the first place? By the way.
If I remember, it was either something about the podcast, or it had to be through LinkedIn, or you offered to do audio editing or something, right?
Mhm. No, no, no. So it was at the time when you launched your book, What They Won't Teach You. Uh, you were doing a giveaway on an Instagram page. I think it was Book Thinkers. And generally, I don't participate in any kind of giveaway or anything, any such thing. But I don't know why, but I just commented on that post. Basically, I participated in that giveaway, and you commented on that reply, and I reached out to you. Like it was a casual reach out, and then we got onto LinkedIn, and then I asked for a call, and of course you were kind enough to give your time, and we got connected on a Zoom call after a few days after that. So it's so accidental, I would say. I generally don't even comment on any kind of giveaways, but just happened.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It's so insane to think about, like the what do you call it? Just the effect of like responding to one DM or responding to one comment. And this is what I was saying earlier about joining as many communities as possible. Like, you join 100 communities, chances are you're going to find one person or one community at least that's going to have a life-changing impact. You have to put yourself out there. You have to talk to other people. And that's like another thing I learned from the podcast is one of the guests was just talking about like other people have what you want. So if you're not talking to other people and connecting with other people, you're not going to get what you want. You're just going to keep what you have. And it's like, as soon as you start to realize that, you're going to go talk to as many new people as possible, because you realize the more people you talk to, the more of what you want you're going to get.
You're right. It's kind of crazy.
So again, it's like simple concepts, right? These are all simple things to understand, but they're not always easy to execute on.
Right. And I think, talking about this, about things being so simple, I'm realizing that like me personally, I spend a lot of time kind of analyzing things and trying to do the best in that situation. But that's not always important. Most of the times I think that it doesn't even matter to be statistically correct and kind of, analyze things. You just have to go with the flow sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just have to take it day by day.
Let's just talk about your college time. You had a ton of stuff on your
What
plate.
is it?
I think, about your college time. You able to listen to me right now? You happy?
It paused for a minute again. What was the question?
No problem. So I said let's talk about your college time. I think you had a ton of stuff on your plate at that time. You wrote a book. You were studying. You had a podcast. You had your businesses running at that time. You were doing a sales job. I remember. So my first question is, how were you able to manage all that stuff?
Man, I mean, ChatGPT wasn't around back then, but if it was, it definitely would have helped. But it was not too difficult. I always say, like, when people are asking about like college and why did you go to college and do you regret going? I mean, I didn't necessarily enjoy going, but I did learn a lot and get a lot out of just the time management skill sets that I developed while I was there. That was definitely the biggest thing. That and networking, because I mean, I met Christian, who I ended up doing the podcast with, and who I end up, partnering up with all my businesses on. So, like, if I didn't go to college, I would have never met Christian, and a lot of the things I do now and have done in the past would have never happened. So it is quite interesting. But it's just time management. It's just like I've always been pretty organized, and I started to learn things just like Google Calendar. Like most people, especially in college, were not using Google Calendar to plan like when their classes were, and then when they're going to do, business, and then when their job was, and then when they're going to eat dinner, when they're going to go to the gym, when they're going to work on their business, right? And so you really have to master your calendar. And that's I think it's even one of the chapters in the book I wrote back then, was just being a master of your calendar, because that's how you get shit done.
Right, right. On your podcast, you have been able to get so much, so great, guests on your show. Neil Patel at that time, I remember I went crazy. How were you able to get him on the show? And now you had Ty Lopez. You have met with Patrick Bet-David. You were on Tom Brady's retirement party. So, like, I like to call this, meeting with highly influential people and highly resourceful people. I like to call them the Gucci gang. So, how do you find your Gucci gang?
Yeah, I think it's just you have to put yourself out there consistently enough, and people will start to notice what's happening. The guys that are higher up and doing really amazing things, they also took a long time to get there. And so when they see you showing up every single day for 7 or 8 years, posting on social media and adding value, like, you could show up in a negative way and not be adding value, not be providing a good service with your business. But if you are, eventually over time, the right people are going to recognize it. And it's not to say like Tom Brady recognized it, or like Gary Vee or Patrick Bet-David, who I had cigars with, right? Like, these guys didn't recognize it and reach out personally, but people around them did. And that's kind of how you get a seat at the table, is you have to put yourself out there. And then you also have to be not afraid to ask. A lot of those situations happened because I simply saw an opportunity. I thought I was a good fit, and I reached out and I asked. And if I didn't reach out and ask and at least give myself a chance, I would have never saw myself in those situations. A lot of people think like they're being seen. So I guess it's kind of like opposite of what I just said, right? It's like, do something long enough, people will see you, but you also have to show them that you're there in the first place. And then when they go and look at, okay, who the hell is this person and why is he, reaching out to me, and they see like all the things you've been doing, that's going to put yourself in a good position.
Right. So, like, you have done, so great at business. You're really young and you have seen the success. I think you're a millionaire now as well, right?
I mean, I don't know the definition of a millionaire, but some people would say, some people won't say. Our businesses in general, the three businesses I'm an owner in, combined this year will do over $5 million. Last year we did over 2 million. And so, I mean, definition of a millionaire, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but sure.
All right. So my question was, like, what do you really want? Like, let's say you're the hero of your story, and what does the hero of your story want?
Yep, it's great. My biggest area for impact is through connecting with other people and giving them opportunities to go all in on something that gives them freedom and fulfillment, right? So, like, for me, I have a lot of freedom and a lot of fulfillment through running successful businesses. And I want to create that, or help other people create that as well. And so Client Ascension is really like the long-term play. It's, if you're not familiar with Client Ascension, it's a coaching program and a community for people that want to start online businesses or have started online businesses and want to, take things to the next level through lead generation, marketing, sales, all the different things that we teach in there. And there's so much impact that's happening in that community. Like, if you think about business and entrepreneurship, the first thing you're trying to solve is like, how do I make money? And then you're making a lot of money. The next thing you try to solve is, all right, I'm spending way too much time doing this. How do I free up my time and start to delegate to other people and build a team? And then once you've solved the time and the money problem, it's like, well, this isn't fulfilling. Like, this doesn't really make me happy. So how do I create impact and feel important and do something meaningful and put out a good product or good vibes into the world? And Client Ascension is kind of doing all those things. So the goal of Client Ascension is to become like the #1 education company in the world, and to compete with people, or with organizations like Harvard, right? It's really what we talked about on our podcast all those years ago with Real Talk University, it's always been about education outside of the traditional classroom. And Client Ascension is
Right.
really doing that now. On a smaller scale, of course, we only have around 400 students in the community, but it is such a strong community. And the results that the students are getting by going through the program are amazing, life changing. Like the one you shared at the beginning of this podcast, like that sort of stuff is happening multiple times every single day, 10x that amount, 20x that amount. And I just wanted 10x, 20x, 100x what we're doing at Client Ascension ultimately, because then we can build the next Harvard, right? So that's really the goal.
That's really cool. So I think generally people really underestimate what they can do. So like if they were told, you know, that they could not fail at any chance, would they do the same thing that they're trying to do? So that's actually a question for you as well. Like, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
What would I do if I knew I was going to fail?
If you knew that you will never fail.
Oh, if I would never fail. That's a really good question. If I knew I would never fail, like in terms of like what business would I start or what would I do with my career?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a business. I think does not even has to be career. It has to be more, you know, it has to be at a broader scope. For example, let me add some context to it. Like for example, I want to be a businessman, and that's because of the environment around me. I see people, having success with entrepreneurship, with businesses. I like that people, make the they make the kind of money that they make and the lifestyle they have, and that influences my decision to be a businessman, right? So
Hmm.
it
Oh,
comes
I
from your
see what you're saying.
environment,
I think if I could never
right?
fail, if it's impossible to fail, I'd want to be like a country artist. I want to be like a country musician, like a Zach Bryan or a Morgan Wallen, like a country superstar.
And why would you not do this now?
Dude, I have a guitar back here. I've tried to learn how to play it. It's like there how they say growing up, like you can do anything. Like you can do anything you want. You set your mind to. It's like I can't go and become an NBA basketball player. Like it's just not who I am. So it's just not for me. But I love what those people do, and I just think they have one of the coolest careers. And being on the opposite side of like being a fan and being in the audience at these concerts is just an amazing feeling. So I can only imagine the feeling that they get being able to be up there and perform in front of a crowd and share music that is just being carried with so many people every single day. It's just so cool to think about.
Right. Like, and I personally think that most of the things that we aspire for is because of the environment around us. And if we remove that environment influence part out of our thinking and mindset, I think it would be a whole different thing that we'd be doing right now, right? So that doesn't mean that you cannot be an entrepreneur, but again, that would change the whole scope and perspective of that, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why I think like financial freedom is really cool, like total financial freedom, and then you restart your life because you no longer have that financial goal, because when you're young you want to make your career and be make the kind of money that you want and the lifestyle that you want. But what if you had all of that? What would you do if you had all of that at the first place?
I feel like I would continue going with what we're doing at Client Ascension. Maybe it would look a lot different in terms of what I prioritize, right? Like if I had all the money in the world, like we would spend a lot of money at Client Ascension to grow it and to bring in more team members and to pay the team members more. But Client Ascension at the end of the day is a business. And so it still needs to operate as a business. It needs to really make sure that it's profiting, because otherwise it's not going to be around long enough for the impact to really set in. So I think I would be doing a version of Client Ascension as I grow more in faith. Um, I think I'd get more involved with a church as well and try to contribute to spreading their message. But I think we're able to do a lot of that through Client Ascension as well. We do a Bible study in there, and so I'd probably lean into more of that stuff at that point.
Awesome. Great. Oh, what's your favorite failure?
My favorite failure. That's a great question. In business, you're saying?
Could be anything that you want to share.
I think my favorite failure was, man, that's a really good one. I'm trying to think. There's so many, bro. Like, as you know, there's so many failures. Um, I think, I mean, I'll come up with an answer now, but it'll probably change over and over and over again. Because I'm telling you, there's so many stories, so many failures that I've really ran into. Oh my God, there's a lot. Um, I'm thinking, bro. I'm thinking like there's so many.
Take it out of here.
I think one of my favorite failures was, bro, this is tough. This is such a good question, man. It's such a good question.
But that also tells that you really want to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm
Because you're
like
looking
thinking
for the
through,
right
like there's
answer.
so many different stories coming to mind. I think my favorite failure um was failing to answer this question. No. I think my favorite failure was probably Express ATC and 24-hour proxy. So those were like literally like my first two businesses ever. I started them when I was around 16, and I'm happy I failed because some of the shit that I was doing in those businesses, it didn't really make sense. I didn't fully understand it. I don't even know if a lot of it was legal, to be honest. It just wasn't a business that I felt fulfilled with. And I didn't know better because I was young. And so I probably would have kept going. And the longer I kept going, the worse the long term negative impacts would have been. So I'm happy it failed when it did because it allowed me to go into the next thing.
Awesome. Great answer. So it's a last final question.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you believe in manifestation, declaring what you want and what you're working for. So I know that you do those Twitter posts where you show that you have written your goals in your notebook. So what I want you to do is, uh, I want you to declare something. It could be a business goal, could be a personal goal, could be anything, and we'll have you. We'll try to have you next year around the same time on the show, and we'll see where are you on that
So you want
declaration.
me to declare like a business goal and then by next year, um, come
We'll
back
just
and
review it
talk about it?
together. Yeah.
Interesting. So like there's a couple of ways we could go with this. I could say I want 1,000 students in Client Ascension, right? Um, that would be an amazing goal. I think the more Client Ascension grows, the more we're able to achieve like that ultimate goal of becoming like a legitimate education company that gets recognized by Harvard. Like, think about it this way: if someone's going through high school and they're a senior and they're considering what to do after they graduate, like, I want them to strongly consider Harvard, but also Client Ascension. Like, that's the ultimate goal is for Client Ascension to be in that conversation one day. It's not going to happen when we talk next year, but
Right. Of
give me
course.
20 years and we'll talk again. But by next year, I'd love to see the community double. And I'd also love to see the podcast that we do, the new podcast that you referenced, TikTok podcast. I'd love to see that grow. I'd love to see, I'm so new to like the YouTube game, which is where we're primarily focused now, which was different than before. It used to just be audio. So I'm not sure what's reasonable with YouTube, but I'd love to see, over 10,000 subscribers at least on that channel a year from now.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Let's see. Let's see if that happens
And
by
the thing
next
is too,
year.
bro, what I'll say is like I'm not really big on setting those types of goals because those goals are outcome goals. And so even though I want 1,000 students in Client Ascension or 10,000 people subscribe to TikTok, I really don't have control over any of those things happening. I have control over, hey, like, let's go out and reach out to good guests at TikTok. Let's make sure when I show up for an interview at TikTok, I do a really good job of asking questions. Let's make sure when the episode of TikTok comes out, I post it everywhere on social media. Those are the things that I'm going to do every single day consistently, that by next year when we come back, we're going to be looking at, 10,000 subscribers, or maybe 5,000, or maybe 50,000. I don't know.
Right.
I can't control it.
Right. Awesome. Great answer. And I think that Harvard goal is really amazing. It's a really smart goal, and definitely it's a very inspiring goal. So it was really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. These were honestly some amazing questions. One of the favorite podcasts I've been on in a while in terms of quality of questions and just referencing things in the past. We go way back, which makes this really cool as well. It's like our first time catching up since way back.
Yeah.
So this is just awesome.
I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I followed Danny Miranda. I think you're friends with him, right? So he published this document where he just he just shared his process of researching for a podcast, and I followed that. So shout out to him.
So good. I know exactly the document you're talking about, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. One last message to the people listening to this.
Just get started. Take the leap of faith, show up, put in work every single day, and let the results happen on their own. I mean, that's a terrible way to put it, but like inputs over outputs, just like make the leap of faith, like make the commitment to start something. And then when you're started, like commit to it for a very long period of time, every single day. Don't miss a day. Like show up and do something every day, something. That's it. One of the best quotes I ever heard from David Meltzer was like, 1 hour a day is better than 20 hours on a Saturday. So like if you put in 1 hour every single day consistently, instead of like nothing, 20 hours, nothing, 20 hours, you're going to get way farther the 1 hour a day every single day consistently. So there's so much power in consistency. And again, it's a simple thing to do, but it's not easy. And so find different people that are in your line of work, share similar interests, share similar goals, backgrounds, all that sort of stuff, so that you can connect and stay held accountable and just enjoy the journey, because it's fun now where I'm at, but it was fun 7 years ago too. And try to make the most of where you're at.
Right. And I think this advice really resonates with me, because I think I'm at a point where I know what to do, how to do, but I don't have anyone to share my thoughts with. And I moved to a new city. I dropped out of college and I moved to a new city, and I don't have any like-minded people around me with whom I can share my stuff, and having that pattern for accountability. And I'm kind of struggling with that right now. Let's see how I'm able to fix it for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be good, bro. Just keep doing stuff like this. Telling you, you have you're a really good podcaster. It's a really good way to approach it. So keep doing stuff like this, and you'll be building your own community soon enough.
Awesome. Thank you for getting on the show. I'm gonna stick your Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, everything in the description, and of course I'm gonna stick Planet Ascension website as well. Let me just